There are moments in life when the person you trusted most becomes the one who wounds you the deepest. And there are moments, years later, when life turns and that same person must face the consequences of their choices. On a cold winter night outside a grand church with golden doors, a priest, respected, admired, praised, stood inside preaching about love, compassion, and family. In the same compound, just outside those doors, his adopted daughter was laboring in the cold, clutching her belly, calling out his name, whispering, "Papa, please." He heard her that night, loud and clear. He just didn't come. And life is very patient. Because many years later, when his world began to crumble, when his name no longer held power, there was only one person left who could save him. The same girl he abandoned. But the choice she made, the choice would change both of their lives forever. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Why did the priest reject who he once called his own? What was he trying to protect, his faith or his reputation? And who was this young woman before the world turned on her? Stay with this story. Because the truth is never where we expect it to be. And the heart remembers its wounds. Her name was Anna. She had been abandoned at a hospital when she was only 3 days old. No name. No family. No one waiting for her. Her beginning was silence. But the priest and his wife took her in. They raised her as their own. Anna grew up in the choir loft under stained glass light, believing faith was the same thing as love. The priest, Emmanuel Carter, was respected like royalty. People traveled from 3 states away to hear him preach. His words felt like warmth spreading through a cold room. His presence carried weight that made people straighten their backs and soften their voices. He walked with dignity always. His suits were perfectly pressed. His smile never wavered in public. His handshake felt like a blessing. He was the kind of man who could quote scripture for any occasion, whose prayers seemed to reach heaven faster than anyone else's. But reputation can become a cage. And when a man begins to fear shame more than he values love, his heart begins to harden in ways he doesn't even notice at first. It starts small. A moment of hesitation. A choice to protect an image rather than a person. A silence when truth should have been spoken. These small compromises accumulate like dust settling on furniture, invisible at first but eventually coating everything. Anna grew into a gentle, thoughtful young woman. Soft-spoken but not timid. Loved by everyone who truly knew her. She had a way of making people feel heard, really heard, when they spoke to her. She dreamed of becoming a midwife, of helping other mothers in moments of vulnerability. She would sit with the older women after church services, listening to their stories about childbirth, taking mental notes, asking thoughtful questions. She wanted to be the kind of presence that made women feel safe during their most frightening moments. And she believed her father would always protect her. She believed this completely, the way children believe in the permanence of their parents' love. She had never questioned it. Why would she? He had chosen her when no one else wanted her. He had given her a name, a home, a place in the world. That kind of rescue, she thought, meant something eternal. But sometimes life tests the very things we hold sacred. It waits until we've built our entire identity around a belief, and then it quietly removes the foundation to see if we can still stand. The church Anna grew up in was not small. It held 1,200 people on Sunday mornings and every seat was filled. There were 3 services each Sunday. The choir was 40 voices strong. The building itself had been constructed in the 1920s, with high ceilings and windows that cast colored light across the wooden pews. Carter's wife, First Lady Patricia Carter, was elegant in a way that felt effortless. She wore cream-colored suits and pearls. Her hair was always perfectly styled. She spoke softly but commanded attention. She ran the women's ministry with precision, organizing events that brought in thousands of dollars for charity. She was kind to Anna in public, affectionate even, but there was always a distance Anna couldn't quite name. A formality that never fully melted even in private moments. Anna understood, even as a child, that she was different from other children in the church. She was the priest's charity case, his act of Christian mercy made visible. People pointed her out as evidence of his goodness. "That's the child he saved," they would whisper with admiration. And Anna learned to smile when they said it, to be grateful on command, to perform the role of the rescued daughter who proved that faith and good works mattered. But underneath that performance, Anna was just a girl trying to figure out who she was beyond being someone's proof of righteousness. She loved to read, especially poetry. She kept journals filled with her thoughts, questions she couldn't ask out loud. She wondered about her birth mother sometimes, creating elaborate stories in her mind about why she'd been left behind. Maybe her mother had been young and scared. Maybe she'd had no choice. Maybe she'd thought about coming back every single day but couldn't. These stories helped Anna make sense of her beginning. Anna was 17 when it happened. There was a man in Carter's inner circle, someone everyone trusted. A deacon. A man who prayed loudly, smiled softly, and served the priest like a son. His name was Deacon Jonathan Hale. He was 32 years old, married with 2 small children. He taught Sunday school for the teenagers. He led Bible study on Wednesday nights. He organized the church's community outreach programs. Everyone loved him. He praised Anna constantly, told her she was special, told her the Lord had great plans for her life. He made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt before. Not as the priest's adopted daughter, not as someone's charity project, but as Anna, as herself. He asked about her dreams. He listened when she talked about wanting to be a midwife. He brought her books about childbirth and women's health. He told her she was wise beyond her years, that God had given her a servant's heart. She believed him. Why wouldn't she? He was a deacon, a man of God, someone her father trusted completely. She thought his attention was mentorship, guidance, the kind of spiritual support church leaders were supposed to provide to young people finding their way. But predators don't look like monsters. They look like friends. They look like helpers. They look like the last person anyone would suspect. They build trust slowly, carefully, establishing themselves as safe before they reveal what they really want. One evening after choir practice had ended, he offered to walk her home. Carter and his wife had left early for a dinner engagement. The church hall was quiet. Most people had already gone. The lights were dim in the hallways. Anna's guard was lowered because she'd never had reason to raise it, not with him, not in this place that was supposed to be sanctuary. And in that silence, in a room that should have been sacred, he stole something from her she could never get back. Her innocence, her trust, her sense of safety in the world. Her belief that church was different from everywhere else, that God's house meant protection, that good men existed who didn't want anything from young girls except their spiritual growth. Anna did not scream. She did not fight the way people think victims should fight. Shock is a quiet thing. It freezes the body, silences the throat, disconnects the mind from what's happening. She left her body during those moments, floated somewhere near the ceiling, watched from a distance as if it were happening to someone else. This is what the mind does to protect itself from unbearable realities. She went home with trembling hands and sat in the bathroom staring at her reflection, asking herself a question no one should ever have to ask. Was this my fault? Had she done something to encourage him? Had she smiled too much, been too friendly, worn the wrong thing? She replayed every conversation they'd ever had, searching for the moment she'd given him permission without meaning to. She found nothing, but still the question persisted. Because victims always blame themselves first. It's easier than accepting that evil can come from people we trust. She told no one. Not Carter. Not his wife, Patricia. Not her friends at church. Not the school counselor. Not anyone. Because somewhere deep inside, in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, she believed that if she spoke she would not be believed. She would be questioned. She would be blamed. Her story would be picked apart. People would ask what she was wearing, why she was alone with him, whether she'd encouraged him somehow. And even if some people believed her, it would destroy the church, shame the priest, bring scandal to the family that had rescued her from nothing. So she carried it alone. She stopped eating. She stopped sleeping well. She stopped singing in the choir. She became quiet in a way that worried the people who really knew her, but the priest was too busy with church business to notice. Patricia asked once if she was feeling well, but accepted Anna's simple, "I'm fine," without pushing further. Because sometimes people don't want to see what's right in front of them. Sometimes asking deeper questions means accepting responsibility for the answers. Weeks passed. Then months. Her body began to change in ways she couldn't hide forever. Her clothes fit differently. She felt nauseous every morning. She was exhausted all the time. Her heartbeat was not her own anymore. There was another life growing inside her, a life created through violence, a life she hadn't chosen but that was choosing to exist anyway. And word spread. Not because Anna spoke, but because secrets have their own way of clawing themselves into daylight. Someone noticed her body changing. Maybe a church mother who'd seen enough pregnant teenagers to recognize the signs. Maybe another girl her age who whispered to her friends. Maybe the deacon himself, worried she would tell, who started planting seeds of a different story, one where Anna was the seducer, the temptress, the Jezebel who'd led a good man astray. However it happened, the whispers reached the priest. And Carter did not ask what happened. He did not ask who did this to her. He did not ask if she was harmed. He did not ask if she cried herself to sleep every night. He did not ask if she needed help or protection or understanding. He did not gather her in his arms and promise to make whoever hurt her pay for what they'd done. He asked one question. What will people think of us? Not what will happen to Anna. Not how can we help her. Not who is responsible for this. Just what will people think? What will this do to his reputation, his standing in the community, his church's image, his legacy? In that single question, Anna learned the difference between family and ownership. She learned that she had never really been his daughter. She had been his project, his proof of goodness, his public demonstration of Christian charity. And now that she threatened his image instead of enhancing it, she had lost her value. Carter's rage was cold, not hot. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He simply withdrew all warmth from his voice and told her she had brought shame upon his house. He demanded to know who the father was. Anna, still protecting everyone but herself, said she wouldn't say. This was interpreted as defiance, as stubborn pride, as further evidence of her moral failure. The truth that she was protecting them from a scandal worse than the pregnancy never entered his mind. Or maybe it did, and he chose not to pursue it because knowing would require action he wasn't willing to take. Patricia cried, but she didn't defend Anna either. She simply asked how they would explain this to the congregation, what story they could tell that wouldn't damage everything they'd built. In that moment, Anna realized she was completely alone. The two people who should have protected her were only thinking about themselves, about their reputation, about their legacy. She was pregnant from rape, and utterly abandoned by the people who called themselves her family. The priest made a decision. Anna would leave the house. She could not stay under his roof in her condition. It would raise too many questions, cause too much gossip, threaten everything he'd worked for. He told her she had made her bed and now she would lie in it. He told her she had choices and she had chosen poorly and now she would face consequences. He spoke as if she had agency in her own assault, as if she had selected this path willingly, as if females regularly choose to destroy their own lives for fun. He gave her 1 week to make arrangements. He would not help her financially. He would not acknowledge her as his daughter if anyone asked. She was to tell people she was going to live with relatives out of state. She was to leave quietly, without drama, without making trouble. And she was never to use his name or claim connection to his church again. Anna spent that week in a fog. She packed her few belongings. She said goodbye to no one because there was no one to say goodbye to. The friends she'd had at church had already started avoiding her, their parents having warned them away from the girl who'd gotten herself in trouble. Alone and terrified, Anna was being blamed for her own assault, judged for a pregnancy she hadn't chosen, condemned by people who claimed to follow a savior who'd shown nothing but compassion to women in difficult circumstances. She left. She survived. Tried, but on a fateful day she came home. The place she considered to be home. Carter and his wife were angry to see her. The symbol of their inadequacy. All they saw was shame, and just for the night they allowed her stay. Not because they want to, but because it's midnight. She was warned to leave at dawn, before anyone can see her. But that night the contractions came early. She was 8 months along, not 9, but stress and malnutrition had triggered labor prematurely. She was alone in her room, the small bedroom that had been hers since she was 3 days old, clutching her belly, gasping for breath. Pain like nothing she'd ever imagined ripped through her body in waves. She called for him. "Papa, please." Not sir, but Papa, the name she'd used when she was small and still believed in his love. But reputation is a wall. And sometimes it blocks out compassion entirely. Sometimes it blocks out everything human, everything decent, everything that should matter more than what strangers think. Carter heard her. He stood in the hallway outside her door, his hand on the doorknob, listening to her cries. Patricia stood beside him, tears running down her face, waiting to see what he would do. And he chose. He chose his reputation over his daughter. He chose his image over her life. He chose the approval of people who didn't even really know him over the girl he'd raised since infancy. He ordered the servants. "Open the door. Let her go." She made her choice. As if going into premature labor was a choice. As if being terrified and alone was a choice. As if any of this had been her choice from the beginning. Again, they opened the church gates because the priest's house was connected to the church property, part of the same compound. Anna stumbled out into the night, her overnight bag in one hand, the other hand pressed against her belly. It was raining. Not the gentle, beautiful kind that makes everything look peaceful. Her breath came in shaking gasps, visible in the cold air. Her body was breaking, contractions coming faster now, and she was standing outside in the cold because the man who raised her cared more about what people thought than whether she lived or died. She looked back one last time as the gates closed. Not looking for rescue anymore because she understood now that rescue wasn't coming. Just looking for explanation, for some sign that this wasn't really happening, that the father she'd trusted for years couldn't really be casting her out while she was in labor. But there was no explanation. Just the closing of gates, the turning of locks, the switching off of lights. Just abandonment, pure and complete and devastating. And in that moment, something inside Anna did not shatter. It would have been easier if it had shattered. Broken things can be fixed, pieces can be put back together, cracks can be filled. But what happened to Anna was different. Something hardened. Not into bitterness, though she would have been justified in becoming bitter. Not into hatred, though hatred would have made sense. It hardened into survival. Into determination. Into a kind of strength that only forms under unbearable pressure. She started walking. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't stay there, couldn't collapse outside the gates of the place that should have been sanctuary. Each step was agony. Each contraction made her stop, doubled over, breathing through pain that felt like her body was tearing itself apart. The night kept darkening. And Anna kept walking, one foot in front of the other, because stopping meant dying and she wasn't ready to die. She had a baby coming who deserved a chance at life even if its beginning was violence and its arrival was marked by abandonment. If you're still watching, type, "I'm here" in the comments. Let's see how many of you are with us on this journey. Anna collapsed 3 blocks from the church. A woman named Ruth Williams found her. Ruth was 56 years old, had lived in the neighborhood her entire life, and was walking home from her night shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. She saw Anna crumpled on the sidewalk, heard her cries, and didn't hesitate. She didn't ask questions. She didn't judge. She just acted. She called an ambulance. She held Anna's hand. She told her she wasn't alone. She rode with her to the hospital. She stayed. The baby came 4 hours later. A girl. Small because she was early but healthy. Strong lungs, strong heartbeat, tiny fingers that wrapped around Anna's thumb the moment they touched. Anna looked at this child, this life that had come from violence but was itself innocent, and felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking. Opening. Like ice melting after a long winter. This was her daughter. And whatever had happened to create her, she was here now, real and breathing and needing love. Ruth stayed at the hospital for 2 days. She brought Anna clean clothes. She brought food. She asked gentle questions and listened to answers without judgment. And when Anna was discharged with nowhere to go, Ruth took her to the New Beginnings shelter, a place run by women who understood that sometimes survival requires help, that strength doesn't mean doing everything alone, that there's no shame in needing support. The shelter was small, only 12 beds, but it was clean and safe and run by women who'd survived their own stories of violence and abandonment. The director was a woman named Sister Margaret Chin, though she wasn't actually a nun, just someone people called Sister because of the way she cared for women others had given up on. She looked at Anna, at the baby, and said simply, "You have a place here as long as you need it. No judgment. No time limit. Just support." Anna stayed at the shelter for 8 months. In that time, she finished her GED because she dropped out of school when the pregnancy became visible and the whispers became unbearable. She took online classes in early childhood development. She learned about resources for single mothers. She attended counseling sessions that helped her understand that what happened to her was assault, not her fault, that she carried no blame for her own violation. This was the first time anyone had explicitly told her that, had named what happened clearly, had released her from the burden of false guilt she'd been carrying. She named her daughter Grace. Not hope, not faith, not any of the names that felt too much like pressure to be something symbolic. Just Grace. Simple, beautiful, meaning unearned gift. Because that's what this child was, a gift Anna hadn't asked for but that had arrived anyway, changing everything. Grace was a quiet baby, watchful, with eyes that seemed to take in everything. Anna would hold her for hours, just watching her breathe, amazed that something so perfect had come from something so painful. She made a promise to Grace in those early days. A promise that she would never abandon her, never choose reputation over her well-being. She promised to love her completely, messily, imperfectly, but always, always to love her. Anna eventually moved into a small apartment, 1 bedroom in a building that had seen better decades but was affordable on her salary from working at a grocery store. She worked days, took classes at night when Ruth or Sister Margaret could watch Grace, slept when she could. It wasn't easy. There were nights she cried from exhaustion, days she wasn't sure how she'd pay both rent and utilities, moments she felt so alone it physically hurt. But she kept going. Because she had Grace. And Grace needed her. And Anna had learned that need is not burden. Need is connection. Need is purpose. She saw Carter once during those years from a distance. She was walking with Grace, who was maybe 2 years old then, toddling beside her holding her hand. Carter was across the street getting into his car after some community event. He looked older, grayer, thinner somehow. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Anna felt nothing. Not anger. Not longing. Not even curiosity. Just nothing. He looked away first. Got in his car. Drove away. And Anna continued her walk, Grace babbling beside her about something only toddlers find fascinating. Anna had expected that seeing him would hurt, would bring back all the pain and betrayal. But instead, she felt only distance, like looking at a character in a story that no longer had anything to do with her life. He had been important once. He had shaped her. But he no longer defined her. She had become someone new, someone he hadn't made, someone who existed completely independent of his approval or rejection. Time passed the way it does when you're busy surviving. Grace turned 3, then 4, then 5. Anna kept working, kept studying. She applied to a midwifery program and was accepted with a scholarship that covered most of the tuition. She couldn't believe it at first, kept reading the acceptance letter over and over, convinced there had been some mistake. But there was no mistake. She was going to become a midwife. The dream she'd had, the one that had seemed impossible after everything fell apart, was actually going to happen. The midwifery program was intense. 2 years of classes, clinical rotations, studying late into the night after Grace was asleep. Anna attended births, caught babies, held women's hands through contractions, whispered encouragement to mothers who were terrified and exhausted and powerful. She was good at it. Natural. The instructors noticed. The mothers she helped noticed. She had a way of making women feel safe, truly safe, in their most vulnerable moments. Maybe because she understood vulnerability from the inside. Maybe because she knew what it was like to need someone and have them turn away. She graduated at the top of her class. A single mother, former abandoned adopted daughter, now a certified nurse midwife with job offers from 3 different hospitals. She chose the community hospital, the one that served mostly low-income families, immigrant women, and women who had nowhere else to go. She chose it because she remembered being one of them. She chose it because she wanted to be for other women what Ruth and Sister Margaret had been for her. Grace started first grade. She was bright, curious, kind in the way children are kind before the world teaches them to be otherwise. She loved school, loved learning, loved making friends. Anna volunteered in her classroom when she could, helped with field trips, brought snacks for class parties. She was present in Grace's life in every way that mattered. And Grace, for her part, seemed happy, secure, loved. She asked about her father once, the question all children eventually ask. Anna told her simply that he was not part of their lives, but that didn't mean Grace wasn't completely loved and wanted. Grace accepted this easily, the way children accept simple truths before they learn to complicate them. Anna's life was quiet during these years. She worked. She raised Grace. She had a small circle of friends, mostly other single mothers she'd met through the shelter or work, women who understood the particular challenges of raising children alone while trying to build careers and maintain sanity. She didn't date. She wasn't ready. Maybe she'd never be ready. The idea of trusting a man with her body, her heart, her safety, still felt impossible. Maybe someday. But not yet. For now, her life was full enough with work and Grace and the slow, steady work of healing from wounds that would never completely close but had at least stopped bleeding. Carter's church had grown even larger during these years. She heard about it occasionally, not because she followed his life but because the church was prominent in the city, impossible to ignore. There were billboards with his face advertising special services. Radio spots featuring his voice. News coverage when the church opened a new wing or hosted a major event. He had become more than a priest. He had become a brand, an empire, a name that carried weight beyond the religious community. Anna felt nothing about any of it. His success or failure had nothing to do with her life anymore. She had built something completely separate from him, something he couldn't touch or taint or take credit for. Her life was her own. Her accomplishments were her own. Her daughter was her own. He was just someone she used to know, someone who'd hurt her badly once, someone who no longer mattered. But life has a way of circling back. Of bringing us face to face with the people and moments we thought we'd left behind forever. Of testing whether we've truly healed or just learned to avoid the pain. And for Anna, that moment was coming. She just didn't know it yet. Grace was 7 years old when the phone call came. 7 years old and losing her first tooth and learning to read books and starting to ask more complicated questions about the world. Anna was at work, in the middle of helping a young mother through her first birth, when her phone vibrated with a call from a number she didn't recognize. She ignored it. She was busy. The mother needed her. The phone rang again 20 minutes later. Then again. Then again. When she finally stepped out to check after safe delivery, there were missed calls and a voicemail. She listened to the voicemail in the hallway, still wearing her scrubs, still carrying the adrenaline from the birth she'd just attended. It was a chaplain from St. Luke's Medical Center. Carter had been admitted 3 days ago with heart failure. He had requested to see her. Would she be willing to come? The chaplain's voice was gentle, non-pushy, but there was urgency. Carter was not doing well. If she was going to come, she should come soon. Anna stood in that hallway for a long time after the message ended, her phone still pressed to her ear, listening to nothing. She felt strange. Not sad. Not angry. Not vindicated. Just strange. Like reality had shifted slightly off its axis and she was waiting for it to settle back into place. The priest was dying. The man who'd raised her and then cast her out was dying. And he wanted to see her. After all these years, after all the silence, he wanted to see her. She didn't decide right away. She went home. She picked up Grace from after-school care. She made dinner, helped with homework, read bedtime stories. She tucked Grace in and kissed her forehead and told her she was loved. And then she sat alone in her living room in the dark, thinking. What did she owe him? Nothing. She owed him absolutely nothing. He had forfeited any claim to her presence, her time, her compassion when he'd cast her out. She would be justified in ignoring the message, in letting him die without ever seeing her again. No one could blame her. He had earned her absence. But Anna had learned something in the years since that terrible night. She had learned that her choices were not about what people deserved. They were about who she wanted to be. Carter's choices had made him who he was, a man who'd chosen reputation over love, image over substance, pride over mercy. And Anna's choices would make her who she was. Not who he tried to make her. Not who his rejection had threatened to turn her into. But who she chose to become, independently, intentionally, freely. She called Ruth, told her the situation, asked what she thought. Ruth was quiet for a moment, then said simply, "What does your heart tell you?" Anna laughed, a short bitter sound. "My heart has no idea what to do with this." Ruth's voice was warm when she responded. "Then maybe your peace does. What would give you peace, honey? Not justice. Not revenge. Not even fairness. Just peace. What would let you sleep at night knowing you made the right choice for you?" Anna thought about it all night. And by morning she knew. She would go. Not for him. Not because he deserved it. Not because she owed him anything. But because she needed to see him one more time, not as the frightened lady he'd abandoned, but as the woman she'd become in spite of him. She needed him to see what he'd thrown away. She needed him to understand, even if only for a moment, the full weight of his choices. And she needed to prove to herself that he no longer had power over her, that she could face him without breaking, that she had truly survived. She asked Ruth if she could watch Grace for a few hours on Saturday. Ruth agreed immediately, asked no questions, just said she'd make cookies with Grace and they'd have a wonderful time. Anna didn't tell Grace where she was going. Just that she had something to take care of, something from her past, nothing for Grace to worry about. Grace accepted this easily, excited about spending time with Ruth. Saturday morning came cold and clear. Anna dressed carefully. Not fancy. Not trying to impress. Just clean jeans, a simple sweater, comfortable shoes. She looked at herself in the mirror before leaving and barely recognized the woman looking back. Not because she'd changed physically, though she had grown into herself, found confidence in her posture, peace in her expression, but because she was looking at herself through new eyes. She was no longer the abandoned. She was Anna. Mother. Midwife. Survivor. Woman who'd built a life from nothing and made it good. The hospital was 30 minutes from her apartment. She drove in silence, no music, no radio, just the sound of her breathing and the engine in her thoughts. She parked. She walked through the automatic doors. She took the elevator to the 4th floor. She found the room number the chaplain had given her. And she stood outside that door for a full 5 minutes, her hand raised to knock, unable to quite make herself do it. Finally she knocked. A soft voice from inside said to come in. Anna opened the door. The room was dim, curtains partially closed against the morning light. The priest was in the bed, small and frail in a way that shocked her. This was not the powerful man she remembered. This was someone else entirely. Someone diminished, reduced, human in a way he'd never seen before, when his presence had filled entire rooms and his voice had commanded attention from hundreds. Now he just looked like an old man, sick and scared and alone. His eyes opened when he heard her footsteps. For a moment he didn't seem to recognize her. Then understanding dawned, followed by something Anna couldn't quite name. Not shame. Not exactly. But something close to it. Something that acknowledged without words that he knew what he'd done. That he'd thought about it. That he'd carried it. "Anna," he whispered. His voice was thin, reedy, nothing like the thunder it had once been. "You came." Anna didn't sit down. She just stood at the foot of his bed, her hands in her pockets, her expression neutral. "The chaplain said you wanted to see me." "I didn't think you would come," he said. "After everything. I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," Anna said honestly. "I almost ignored the call. You wouldn't have blamed me if I had." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly she almost didn't hear it. "No. I wouldn't have blamed you." The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of things unsaid. Finally, Carter spoke again. "I'm dying, Anna. They've told me there's nothing more they can do. My heart is failing. I have weeks, maybe days." He paused, struggling with words. "And I realized I have no one. The church, all those people who filled the pews every Sunday, they're gone. The deacons I trusted, the elders I worked with, they all disappeared when the money started running out and the crowds got smaller. Patricia died 2 years ago. Did you know that?" Anna shook her head. She hadn't known. Hadn't kept track of Patricia's life any more than she'd kept track of Carter's. "Cancer," he continued. "It was fast. And painful. And at the end all she could talk about was you. How she wished she'd stood up for you. How she'd failed you. How she'd let me convince her that reputation mattered more than doing right." His eyes filled with tears. "She died with that regret. And now I'm dying with it too." Anna felt something shift in her chest, but she couldn't name it. "Why did you want to see me?" Carter looked directly at her for the first time. "Because I need to tell you I was wrong. Because I need you to know that I failed you in the worst possible way. Because I chose my pride over your safety and it's haunted me every day since." He paused, his voice breaking. "And because I need your help." There it was. The real reason. Anna had known there would be more to this than just an apology. "What kind of help?" "I need a liver transplant," he said quietly. "I'm on the waiting list, but I'm old and the list is long and they don't think I'll survive long enough to get one. Unless I have a living donor. Someone willing to donate part of their liver." He looked at her with desperate eyes. "The doctors say you might be a match. You're the only person I have left. The only person who might be able to save me." And there it was. After all these years, after all the abandonment and betrayal and silence, he needed her. He needed her body, her sacrifice, her willingness to risk her own life to save his. The man who'd cast her out while she was in labor now wanted her to give him part of her. How would you feel in this situation? Would you help someone who abandoned you when you needed them most? Let us know in the comments what you would do. Also, remember to subscribe. Anna stood at the foot of that hospital bed, looking at the man who'd raised her and rejected her, and felt remarkably calm. She should have been angry. She should have been vindicated. She should have thrown his request back in his face and told him exactly what he could do with his desperate need. But she didn't feel any of those things. She just felt clear, focused, like she was finally seeing him completely, without the distortion of either love or hate. "No," she said quietly. "No anger. No pain. She was just certain she can't do this for him." Carter's face crumpled. Hope dying in real time. "Oh," he whispered. "I see." Anna watched him process this, watched the reality settle over him that she couldn't save him. And then she said something that surprised even herself. "But I can help you in other ways." He looked up, confusion and desperate hope mixing in his eyes. "I work at a hospital," Anna continued. "I know people. I can talk to the transplant coordinator, make sure your case is being reviewed properly, advocate for you with the medical team. I can make sure you're getting the best possible care. I can do that." "Why?" The question came out raw, unfiltered. "After what I did to you, why would you help me at all?" Anna was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. "Because I'm not helping the man who cast me out 10 years ago. I'm helping a dying patient who needs an advocate. Because that's who I am now. That's who I chose to become. I help women bring life into the world, and sometimes that means I also have to help people face death with dignity. You don't deserve my help. You didn't earn it. But I'm not giving it because of what you deserve. I'm giving it because of who I want to be." Carter started crying then, not quietly but in great heaving sobs that shook his frail body. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry, Anna. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I chose everything that didn't matter over the one thing that did. I let fear rule me. I let pride destroy me. And I lost you. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me and I did it to myself. Anna felt tears on her own cheeks, but they weren't tears of pain or anger. They were tears of release, of something heavy finally lifting. You did lose me, she said softly. You lost me the night you closed those gates. But I found myself. I found out who I am when everything is stripped away. And that person is strong enough to stand here now and help you anyway. She pulled a chair to the bedside and sat down. I need you to understand something. I'm not your daughter anymore. I'm not the girl you raised. That relationship ended the night you chose your reputation over my life. We can't go back to that. We can never go back to that. But I can be here now, in this moment, as one human being helping another. That's all I can offer you. Carter nodded, still crying. That's more than I deserve. That's more than I ever expected. Anna stayed for 2 hours that first visit. She didn't talk about the past. She didn't say everything that had happened or demand detailed apologies or force him to account for every choice that had led them here. She just talked to him like she would any patient, asking about his symptoms, his pain levels, his fears about the process ahead. Before she left, she told him about Grace. Not everything. Not the full story of how Grace came into the world or what had happened to Anna after she was cast out. Just that she had a daughter. That her daughter was 7. That her name was Grace and she was wonderful. Can I meet her? Carter asked, his voice small and uncertain. Anna shook her head gently. No. Not now. Maybe not ever. And I need to protect her from complications she's not ready to understand. Carter nodded, accepting this boundary without argument. You're a good mother, he whispered. I can hear it in how you talk about her. You're everything Patricia and I should have been and weren't. Anna left the hospital that day feeling strange. Not healed exactly. Not reconciled. But different. Like she'd closed a door that had been standing open for 10 years, letting cold air flow through her life. The door was closed now. Not locked. Not sealed forever. Just closed. And on her side of the door she was warm and safe and whole. He died that night. Quietly. The hospital called Anna even though she'd listed herself only as an emergency contact, not next of kin. She came. She signed the papers. She made arrangements for a simple funeral through the church, which had dwindled to only about 50 regular attendees by then. The empire had crumbled. The brand had faded. All that was left was a man who died alone except for the daughter he'd abandoned, who'd chosen to show up anyway. Anna went to the funeral. She sat in the back. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just bore witness to the end of a life that had intersected with hers in both beautiful and terrible ways. A handful of people attended, mostly elderly church members who remembered when Carter had been powerful, when his words had meant something, before the slow decay of his reputation and health had reduced him to someone they barely recognized. After the service, an elderly woman approached Anna in the parking lot. You're the adopted daughter, aren't you? The woman asked. The one from years ago? Anna nodded. The woman's eyes were kind but sad. I always wondered what happened to you. One day you were there, the next you were gone. We were told you'd gone to live with relatives, but I never quite believed it. I'm glad you survived whatever happened. I'm glad you're here. Thank you, Anna said simply. Anna thought about the deacon who'd assaulted her that evening, wondered briefly where he was, if he'd ever faced consequences, if he even remembered what he'd done or if she'd just been one of many victims he'd left in his wake. She realized she didn't actually care about the answer. His story wasn't hers to finish. She'd built her life completely separate from him, had raised a daughter he would never know existed, had become someone who helped women instead of harming them. His absence from her thoughts was its own kind of victory. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you of your own journey of survival and growth, let us know by liking this video and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Stories about survival, dignity, choice, and grace. Stories that remind us we're all more resilient than we think we are. But here's what Anna's story shows us. We are not defined by what's done to us. We're not defined by who abandons us or who fails us or who hurts us. We're defined by what we build afterward. By how we treat our own children. By whether we perpetuate cycles of harm or break them. By whether we become bitter or become better. By whether we let cruelty make us cruel or let it make us compassionate. So here's the question for you. Think about the people who've failed you. Think about the betrayals you've survived. Think about the times when someone chose their own interests over your well-being. What are you building with that experience? Are you becoming bitter or are you becoming better? Are you perpetuating harm or breaking cycles? Are you letting the worst thing that happened to you define you, or are you defining yourself by what you've built in spite of it? Next week, we'll be sharing another powerful story. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember this. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to build afterward. And that choice, that power to define yourself independently of your circumstances, that belongs to you and only you. No one can take it away unless you let them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And remember, wherever you are in your own journey, whatever you're building from whatever you've survived, you're not alone. We see you. And we're rooting for you.